Film School with film study professor Joe Fortunato with us here on WAKR. So, Joe, this week you're going back to the late 60s with a Space Odyssey.
That's right, Ray. Good morning, everybody. And today we're going to celebrate the 55th anniversary of one of the most interesting and misunderstood movies, perhaps, of all time, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was released April 2nd, 1968. Of course, it was directed by the great Stanley Kubrick, written by Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke, stars Keir Dullea and Gary Lockwood. It did win an Oscar for Best Special Effects. It was nominated for Best Director, Best Writing, and Best Art Direction. And I say it's a misunderstood movie because when it first came out, people didn't know what to make of it. Frankly, sometimes people don't know what to make of it even today. But it has since been considered one of the greatest movies of all time. In fact, it was nominated by the AFI as the 15th greatest movie of all time. Sight and Sound, which is the British version of that, listed it as the 6th greatest, and they have a director's poll that listed it as the 2nd greatest. So it's way up there in its esteem. But like I said, when it was released, it was very polarized in its opinion, receiving both praise and derision. And like I said, now it's considered one of the greatest of all time. In fact, when it was released, there was a premiere that included Rock Hudson, and apparently he walked out and said, "Will someone tell me what the hell that was about?" And Arthur C. Clarke, who co-wrote it, and it was based on his short story called The Sentinel, said, "If you understand 2001 completely, then we failed. We wanted to raise more questions than we answered." And I think that it's a movie that does that. When I first saw it, I kind of felt the same as Rock Hudson. I've since learned about it more and studied it and watched it more, and now it's one of my favorites. So it is something that kind of is an acquired taste, if you will. But it's certainly one of the most famous and important movies. It really kicked off a new generation of sci-fi films. This was a serious sci-fi film that could also be commercially successful. And even though it was polarizing at the beginning, it eventually was commercially successful on a couple of re-releases. It ended up being one of the highest grossers of 1968. But films like Close Encounters and Alien and Blade Runner, modern films like Contact and Interstellar, they're all sort of they owe their existence in some ways to 2001.
Joe, let me ask you this. You mentioned as you saw this movie more and more through time, you grew to appreciate 2001: A Space Odyssey more. What grew on you in regards to the film, with you being a film study professor?
Well, a couple of things. One is I learned about it, read a little bit more. I kind of understood what the point was, and I'm not going to go into detail here, but understanding that the monolith that most people, even if you've not seen the film, are kind of aware of, sort of serves as a jumping off point to new stages of human development. So once I kind of understood that, it made a little bit more sense. But just the direction, it's so carefully constructed. It's a very slow-paced movie, and that bothers some people, but it's mesmerizing in a lot of ways. And not that I'm condoning watching it on any sort of substance, but one of the things that when it came out, they were going to pull it from theaters, but a lot of theater owners said, wait a minute, we have a lot of young people coming in and watching this sort of high, and that kind of stayed in theaters because it was a thing to do, to go in and sort of watch, especially the last third of the movie where the character goes into sort of this other dimension and is very visually. One thing that is interesting about this, a little bit of trivia, is that it's pretty famous for its classical music use, and it's another reason I like it. I just like these great space images with the blue Danube and such. But Pink Floyd, the band, was originally considered to do music for that, if you can imagine, which would have been very interesting. But they didn't. They ended up not doing it, of course. But probably a lot of people have heard the legend, and it is kind of true, that if you sync up Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon with The Wizard of Oz, it kind of turns into a second soundtrack, and it does actually work. But what a lot of people don't know is that if you put Pink Floyd's Echoes from their Metal album to the end of the of 2001, it also sort of serves as an alternate soundtrack. So I'm sure someone will be trying that this weekend.
2001, A Space Odyssey, as we go to film school this week with film study professor Joe Fortunato. Hey, Joe, before I let you go, you and I have something special coming up at the end of the month, April 29th. We're going to get together and take film school on the road to Jilly's in downtown Akron.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. We used to do live Fortunato Film Schools, and then kind of COVID sort of killed that a little bit, and I'm very excited to bring it back live in person, and we want to thank Jilly's for helping us out and giving us a home for this. And it is, as you mentioned, April 29th. The doors will open at 11 a.m. for brunch. You can have a wonderful brunch at Jilly's, and then we'll start the movie at 12 noon. And for those who don't know what I do when I do this live, you and I will talk about the movie at the beginning, then we'll screen the movie together. And I don't think I even mentioned the movie. The movie is the great Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
So we will screen the movie together, and I will do live commentary. So even if you know Raiders of the Lost Ark and have seen it, you're going to learn something, because I'm going to share a lot of backstories and trivia and even some movie mistakes about it. And then afterwards, we'll talk about it sort of like a book club. And all the while, you can enjoy a fabulous brunch at Jilly's while you're enjoying Raiders of the Lost Ark and learning something.
Yeah, the brunch. Joe and I will be there. It's April 29th. Walk-ups, of course, are welcome. We hope to see a lot of you folks there at Jilly's, and we're going to try to do more and more of this as we're going to try to take the film school on the road with our good friend Joe Fortunato. Joe, as always, thanks for the time and the visit, my friend. We'll reconnect again next Friday.
Okay, sounds great, Ray.
And that was another exciting, informative edition of Film School with film study professor Joe Fortunato. Nick Hershey here in the studio for Ray Horner.